Beautiful trophy this is. I'm gonna hand it to my brother so it doesn't fall and break.
I wish I had one.
But
Take it and run.
let me just tell you my reaction when I got a call from Jessica that I would be inducted into this Hall of Fame. First she called in the office. I think my receptionist was late that day and went to voicemail, so she sent me an email, and when I read it, my eyes popped out of my head. I was over the moon happy because this is, ask any trial lawyer in the state of California, this is the ultimate accomplishment and honor for a trial lawyer to be inducted into this great pantheon of trial lawyers that are members of this Hall of Fame. As a matter of fact, I shot off an email after I called my wife. I told her the good news. I shot off an email to family all over the country and friends all over the country, and I wanted to catch their attention. So in the subject box, I put in there a call from Cooperstown. Because, as my brother said, baseball was always my first love, and I always wondered what it would feel like to get a call that those great baseball players get, notifying them that they're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I said in that email, now I know how it feels. So that's how honored I am. And so I'm just absolutely humbled and appreciative and blessed. I want to reflect for a second on my upbringing. My brother gave you some of the vignettes about our upbringing, but I just want to tell you from a personal view all the things that my parents exposed us to, my siblings, my brother and my sister, to, which really laid the foundation for everything. By the way, my sister's not here, and my brother didn't mention it, but my sister, she's 7 or 8 years, she's 7 years younger than me, 8 years younger than me, and 7 years younger than my brother. Is probably the most accomplished out of all of us. She's the president of Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and we went back for her inauguration about 10 years ago, and we were so honored that she was named as the president of that prestigious liberal arts college in New England. And she gave a little speech, and she talked about the 5 generations since a man named Jacob Pruitt was alive, maybe 6 or 7 generations. Jacob Pruitt was a slave, and several generations went by, and she said in her speech that she is the great 5 times over granddaughter of Jacob Pruitt. So am I. So I just wanted to mention my sister, who is not here, is back in administrating at Trinity. But anyway, so as my brother said, I was born into a legal environment. I had the pleasure recently of working with a law firm, Quinn Emanuel, mega firm, and there was this, we were working on suing the city of Los Angeles. I'm sure you've all heard of the problems that the city council had down there, where what we did in this lawsuit laid the foundation for that tape being released. We don't know who did it, but it certainly laid the foundation. But I won't get into that, but I just brought it up because I was paired I'm the trial lawyer. They were working behind the scenes, Clint Emanuel. I was paired with a woman by the name of the Honorable Crystal Nix Hines. Now, when I work with people, I want to find out about their background. So I researched her, and the reason why I say honorable is because she is the former ambassador to UNESCO under Barack Obama. And then I read a little something else about her, and I filed it away in the back of my head and we did the thing. That's not the important thing. But I have a picture of my mother, sorority, Delta Mari, college sorority, where she was the president. And I have a picture of my father's law school class. And on there was this guy named Theophilus Nix. And when I started working with Crystal Nix Hines, I said, wait a minute, I read where her father was a lawyer, so I researched and everything. It just so happens that they were in the same class. And so I said, Crystal, do you know we have something that goes back almost 70 years? She said, I'm all ears. Tell me about it. And I said, our fathers were in the same class, and they were on law review together. And she filled me in on all these stories that my father never told me about them preparing briefs on that great United States Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education. So with that background, I couldn't do anything but what I do, civil rights and as a litigator, and it all started there. As a matter of fact, my brother said I was born right there at Harvard University when my father was in law school. There was this bureau set up by the United States government after the Civil War called the Freedmen's Bureau. And their charge was to make life, the transition from slavery to citizenship as seamless as possible. And one of the things they needed to do was set up a hospital system, and the first hospital they set up was in Washington, D.C. It's called Freedmen's Hospital. Well, I was born at Freedmen's Hospital. So that laid the foundation for my pursuit of justice. I want to thank all the coaches I had in Little League, in high school. And it laid a foundation for me. I got to tell you, if Boy Scouting was around as strong as it was then today, we wouldn't have all these gangs in the inner city of Los Angeles. An incredible program. When I was 14 or 15 years old, I was selected by my troop to go over to Philmont Scout Ranch in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains for 3 weeks and hike, and I came back a man, 13 years old, as a man. It really laid a foundation for things for me. I want to thank all the leaders who took time out with us to raise us up right and teach us all the lessons that we needed to learn in life and to pass on to our kids. I played college basketball for one of the great coaches in college basketball history, a guy named George Stanich, who was probably the greatest athlete in UCLA history. I didn't go to UCLA, but he was the greatest athlete in UCLA history. People's eyes are popping out. He said, wait a minute, didn't Jackie Robinson go to UCLA? Yeah, he was a great athlete. But George Stanich was the silver medalist in the high jump in Helsinki in the Olympics. He was a professional baseball player, and he played in the precursor to the NBA. He taught me so much about life when I was a freshman in college. I want to thank all my college and law school professors. They all shaped me and molded me and steered me in the right direction. Johnny Cochran had done more for me than anybody outside my family. He hired me at the district attorney's office, and he saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. He was quite a character, quite a character, a force of nature. I can go on for the next hour talking about stories and lessons that Johnny taught me. But suffice to say, Johnny put me 20 years ahead of the game from the lessons that he taught me. He taught me how to practice law. And that's something you don't learn in law school. He gave me the rudimentary elements of how to try a case, which is something you don't learn in law school. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him as one of the pillars of my foundation as a lawyer. My brother mentioned Home United Methodist Church, the venerable African American church, most prestigious church, and the great civil rights leader, the Reverend James Tim Lawson, who had his 94th birthday last week, was our pastor for 30-something years. And if you think, wait a minute, I think I've heard that name before. The reason why you've heard it is because James M. Lawson was the architect of the civil rights movement, the nonviolent aspect of the civil rights movement in America. He was Martin Luther King's mentor, trained in India under Gandhi, came here and set up the whole nonviolent aspect of the civil rights movement. And there have been movies about him. I think the movie The Butler was about him and how he gave workshops in civil disobedience in Nashville, and his students were Congressman John Lewis, Diane Nash, Stokely Carmichael. All of these people were mentored. Anyway, Reverend Lawson is like a second father to me, and you can't be raised in a church listening to, or be a young man in the church and raised in the church, listen to a man talk about civil rights Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. So I want to acknowledge him. My parents were amazing people. I'm from 4 generations on both sides of college graduates, and my brother talked about them real briefly. My sister paid homage to my mother. Both of them are no longer with us, but they're here in spirit. My sister told a story about my mother, who was a society lady in Atlanta, Georgia. Grew up, and my father was a preacher's son from New York City, and they met in college and at Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta. But my sister told a story about my mother. I didn't know this until she told the story at her inauguration, that my mother used to wake her up every morning and whisper in her ear, "You can be anything you want to be." You know? And so that was the kind of parents that we had. My mother woke me up and said, "Johnny, stay out of trouble." So, I had the best parents, and that was for our success. I talked about my siblings, my brother. I remember my brother, who was partner at this mega law firm, coming over after he worked and tutoring me in bar subjects, get me past the bar. That kind of brother, I always looked up to him, and to this day, he's my big brother, and he's my best friend, and it's amazing to be best friends with somebody who was raised in a bunk bed right above you. Thank you so much. You know, when we were coming here to fly up here, I was in the car with my wife and daughter, and I had to stop for gas, and so I told my wife, "You go pay the person in the booth, in the mini mark, and I'll pump the gas," and she did, and she didn't come out, and I looked in there, and I saw her, and she hugged this man who was the clerk behind the counter. She finally came out, and I said, "Well, who was that?" I went to high school with him, and as a matter of fact, we were friends As a matter of fact, I thought he was going to be my husband at one time. I said, look at that. Aren't you glad you chose me? You could be married to somebody who's a clerk at the gas station. She said, oh, no, no, no. She said, if I had married him, he'd be on his way to pick up the wind over my wings, daughter Jana. And so my family means so much to me. Thank you so much to the people who traveled here. When I announced this, people said, well, I want to come. I said, no, I can't ask you to come way up to Monterey, but the ones who are here are in my inner circle, and they insist on coming. Thank you so much to Mark Harris, who's my god brother, who and his wife Mari. Mark is an attorney. Mark is a former number 3 person at the state bar, and Mark championed the bill that pushed through the law in the assembly of the state bar that required NCLE courses yearly.
Don't hold that against me.
Come on, John. Eric and his lovely bride. They just had the best wedding I've ever been to. It was in San Anselmo, California, on the campus of University of Redlands. There in San Anselmo. It's beautiful. My godson Martin, who passed the bar a couple of years ago, and is on his way. Thank you for coming. My godmother, Mrs. Norwood, who used to cook for me, my mother's good friend, she insisted on coming. Thank you so much. Steve and Heidi Glickman, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to say more about Steve in a second, but thank you all for coming and sharing this with me. What it means to me, and I'll say this real briefly, I don't want to be long-winded, more long-winded than I am already. What it means to be a trial lawyer is not necessarily about money, about social standing and prestige. For me, it's about seeking justice. For me, it's about doing the right thing. To me, it's about using my position as a trial lawyer to do social engineering. And when I got the word from the litigation section about this award, it made me reflect on the over almost 200 trials that I've done over the years, over 40 years. And a couple of them just stand out. I just want to, if you indulge me for 1 second, I'm going to teach a lesson with just a couple of cases. Number one, I represent a guy named Ross Delano Temple. This was way back when I was doing criminal cases. I don't do criminal cases anymore. But Ross Temple's mother came to me and she said, my son was charged with murder. And it was a multiple murder. And in California, if you're charged with multiple murder, you're eligible for the death penalty. And I said to the mother, I said, you know, these are very expensive cases. Why don't you just go with the public defender? They'll appoint a lawyer. They have the resources because those people who are on the panel to do those type of cases, they bill $300,000 to $500,000. And if you do it in private practice, not many private practitioners get death penalty cases because you know, it's usually a crime that where someone who is indigent or can't afford a lawyer commits. And so she said, no, Mr. Sweeney, I heard the question, I want you to do it. I said, I just can't. And she said, my son didn't do it. He's going to lose his life. So she came back week after week and called me and called me. And I said, this guy has to be innocent. Nobody who knows their son comes back this often with this much passion. And so I decided to take the case. And she said, well, I can't pay you much. I said, well, what can you pay me? She said, I can pay you $10,000. And I said, I'll take your case. A case that I normally would have charged, death penalty case, $1 million, $750. I took her case. And I got a letter from the district attorney's office saying that the death penalty panel has met and decided the proper penalty for your client is death, as opposed to life without possibility of parole. And I really wanted to try this case because it's the ultimate case for any trial lawyer, a death penalty case, because you can go on and do class actions to settle for $5 billion, or big tort cases. I've done a lot of cases where I've gotten multi-million-dollar verdicts. And I wanted to do this one because it's the ultimate challenge for a trial lawyer. And I remember that the old Bible story of the widower who gave 2 copper coins, but she was looked upon in the eyes of the Lord more favorably because she gave in proportion what she had greater than what any multimillionaire could give. So I took her case. Long story short, it was the first not guilty verdict in a death penalty case in California that anybody knows. Because remember, California abolished the death penalty for some. That's why Charles Manson got life without parole, because they abolished it. But they brought it back, and this was one of the first cases where they saw deaths. And on my wall, along with countless awards, my Eagle wall at work, there is this. I got this box, lucite box, matted. On one side was that death letter from the district attorney's office saying they're seeking death. On the other side was the docket from the court that read, "We the people in the above type of action find your client or the defendant, Ross Delano Temple, not guilty 7 straight times." And I'm so proud of that. Didn't get any money, barely any money, but it really, really exemplified what a trial lawyer does. He does it for justice. Another real quick thing, case that I want to talk about, and probably what has me up here today, is about 20 years ago, I started getting reports out of the city of Compton that the police were very, very aggressive. They were beating citizens, and I got a call from this young woman, Shanara Batiste, and actually her mother called, and she said my daughter's jaw was broken by the sheriff's department. I won't go into the facts, but we sued, we won, but it was the first case where I knew that they were being very aggressive. Something was going on out there. Shanara Batiste then referred a case to me where this young 15-year-old boy who was walking back from McDonald's with his buddies on a hot summer afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were stopped by the Compton Sheriff's Department. And long story short, you see, and it happened to be caught on film because it was a donut shop with a surveillance camera. You see the boys walking past, and about 3-4 minutes later, you see little Avery Cody running past, and you see a deputy chasing him and getting to a crouch and firing and shooting the guy in the back. And won that case, but the point is that I knew something was going on at that time. There had to be a gang in the sheriff's department who was getting credit for killing these kids and these African American people. And so, but I couldn't prove it. But I knew the history of gangs within the sheriff's department. I knew that something was going on. And then I got a case where Robert Thomas Jr. was standing in front of a party one night, and some sheriff deputies rolled by. They weren't called to the party. They weren't called for service. And they crept up on the party, shut off their lights, and jumped out like cowboys with their guns and were harassing them and telling them to pick up their shirt and show me your waist and all this. And one of them, Robert Thomas Jr., took off running down the street. And it wasn't 100 yards. And the police officer who was chasing him the witnesses said, could have just reached out and grabbed him, but he turned left into a driveway and he heard pow, 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 pow. He executed. And they falsified a police report, and nobody thought they could win it until I got a hold of the case. I looked at the coroner's report. I looked at the angle of the gunshots, and they were all going downward. And I noticed an entry wound in the left forearm of this Robert Thomas. There was an exit wound in back of it, which meant that he had his hands up, and it was going down, which means he was on his knees begging for his life. We took it, and I said, I'm not going to settle this case. The defense firm said, we're not going to settle this thing. We believe in our officer, and I knew something was going on. And we'll talk about settlement if you come down under $500,000. I said, nope, I'm trying this case. We tried the case, and it was the largest verdict. It was $8 million for an African American who was shot by the police. And still, I knew something was going on. And I got a hold of a case after that, Dante Taylor. And Dante Taylor had 5 kids and parents, and so I had a conflict of interest, and so I asked my good friend, the great trial lawyer Steve Glickman, who's here, if he would join with me in trying this case. And Steve didn't do excessive force civil rights cases, but he agreed to join it because I asked him to. And at an early mediation, Sheriff's Department offered $200,000. It was insulting, but I knew, they didn't know what I knew as far as my suspicions there was a gang going on. So we rejected it, took deposition, started taking deposition. I took the deposition of a guy named Samuel O'Donnell, one of the shooters. And I asked him if he harbored any racial animus toward African Americans. It took him 5 minutes to answer this question. He's fumbling around answering, and I had the foresight to do a video deposition. It would never have gotten the same publicity and have the same force and effect if I just did and that's a lesson for people who take these video depositions. They're more expensive, but in this case, it was very, very important. And he finally said, I do have racial, after 5 minutes, I do. They took a break after that, and they came back and said, I didn't understand your question. Then I asked him, I said, because I asked this question in all these depositions and all these cases, do you have any tattoos on your person? And I asked this question because I know that there's a history of sheriff gangs in the department. And they started out with bonding in clubs at these stations, and they morphed over the years into street gangs, really street terrorist organization. And so this deputy said, yes, I do. I do have a tattoo. And I said, well, tell me. He said, I have them on my arms. And he described and everything. After he described them, I said, I was close as I am to this table, across the conference room table. I said, what about the one on your leg? I bluffed him all the way. I bluffed him all the way. And in cross-examination, you learn, I mean, one of the lessons, the whole essence of cross-examination is intelligence. Know the person you're cross-examining, and know background and where you're trying to go. And when I asked him that question, he didn't know what I knew. And he gulped, and I could see his jugular throbbing. And to a cross-examination master, that is a great sign, because you know they're nervous. He started squirming, and he said, yes, I do. He went on to describe the sinister tattoo with a skeleton, with a Nazi helmet on, with an AK-47 rifle, and surrounded by flames. And it had on it the number 38. And the symbolism is unmistakable. Skeleton symbolizing death. The flames, he's emerging from hell. And this AK-47, we mean business, and this Nazi helmet. And he described it through the discovery and motions and arm twisting. I got a picture of that tattoo, and I published it. I gave it to this reporter who became an award-winning reporter named Maya Lau with the LA Times, and the story went viral around the world. And you can Google Samuel Aldama deposition this day. It has hundreds of thousands of hits because we published that. And so when I brought Steve on, Steve is an extremely well-known. His dad was this great trial lawyer, a pioneer since the 50s in torts cases. And Steve had seen this movie, 7 billboards over Ebbing, Missouri, or 9 billboards or something. So he said, we need to put them on billboards. I said, Steve, are you crazy? Put them on billboards. So the guy goes and consults with a billboard lawyer. I didn't know they had a billboard. And hires an ethics lawyer. Just so, I mean, we knew if we put them on billboards that they would really come after us. So we got the clearing from our lawyers. And up these 2 shooters went on 8 billboards in Compton. It flew around the country. I was speaking at a convention somewhere, teaching. They said, are you the ones who put those billboards up? And I said, yeah. And so we told the defense, and by the way, the defense made a motion with the court for an injunction, get them down. Denied. To the Second Appellate District, denied. Petition for review with the California Supreme Court, get out of here, denied. And we just smiled, we left them up. Long story short is that, circling back to what I told you, to me this is about justice. They settled that case for a record amount. We compensated that family, but more importantly for me, it changed the policy within the Sheriff's Department, and it became a huge, huge international story, and there was a sudden and precipitous drop in the killing of African Americans in Compton. That's what it's about, and maybe, who knows, maybe there's a movie in the works, maybe there's a But anyway, thank you. I know I was a little long-winded and emotional, but I get emotional when I talk about this profession that has done so much for me. I'm so honored to this highest award that a trial lawyer can get. Everybody says it. Everybody knows and what this means. I'm so appreciative, and thank you so much.
Absolutely unbelievable. Thank you. I think this is the first time that I have listened to a trial attorney speak or an attorney speak and just wanted him to keep on going. I could have stayed for another hour. It's like what an amazing story. Thank you so much. At this